At 6 years old, amid the cheers of thousands, Michael Jackson didn't stand to play. He stood to perform. That little boy didn't know the stage lights were burning away his childhood. His moonwalk left the world breathless. Thriller shattered every record. But behind the sparkling white glove, Michael hid a trembling child, flinching at his father's footsteps in the hallway. He told Oprah in 1993, "I cried from loneliness, from having no childhood." On June 25, 2009, in a silent mansion, Michael's heart stopped, stilled by propofol. His doctor panicked. Vials of medicine were hidden. A medical accident? A desperate escape? Or a darker secret tied to the billions his music earned? Today, we trace Michael's steps from dazzling stages to the room where the lights went out forever. Are you ready to unravel the mystery of the King of Pop? Chapter 1: A Boy Singing Under the Whip. People saw Michael Jackson stand for hours before a mirror, white hat tilted, sequined glove gleaming, but his eyes searched for a boy long gone. That was Michael in the 1980s, a global superstar. But in a cramped house in Gary, Indiana, in 1958, young Michael had no glow, only wounds. His brother Jermaine once wrote that their family held secrets never to be told. If anyone knew those secrets, it was Michael, the boy who sang a wrong note and was beaten until he cried on a cold floor. Their tiny home, where 10 siblings squeezed into 2 bedrooms, was Michael's first stage. His father, Joe Jackson, a steel mill worker, turned his music dreams into commands. At 4, Joe forced Michael into Jackson 5 rehearsals, belt in hand, eyes icy. A childhood friend said, Michael shook when Joe walked in, hiding under the table, sobbing for mercy, but Joe just turned away. Joe denied abusing his kids. Michael told a different story. The sound of his father's footsteps in the hallway made him vomit in panic, a reflex born of deep fear. Another friend whispered something darker. Some nights, Joe hit Michael so hard he couldn't stand. In their small room, Michael kept a notebook filled with sketches of distorted, smiling faces. Nobody knew what they meant, but it lay on his pillow like his only friend. Some say it was how Michael spoke about himself, without words. Joe didn't just use a belt. He mocked Michael. Big nose, ugly face. Those words cut deep, making Michael hate mirrors, hate his own face. He'd sit alone in a corner, singing sad melodies, like he was escaping the world. Michael's childhood was a song with no rest. He didn't play like other kids, only performed, haunted by fear. A neighbor said, I saw Michael outside watching kids play, but he never joined. That notebook, with its warped faces, seemed to hold his loneliness. Were the family secrets Jermaine hinted at the reason Michael never found comfort? Those childhood wounds, like the sketches in his notebook, shaped a fragile soul, ready to shatter under fame's weight. Were those family secrets and the notebook's twisted faces the key to Michael's tragedy? Chapter 2: King of Pop, Prisoner of the Spotlight. In 1964's blazing stage lights, a 6-year-old stepped out, not to play, but to carry a family's dreams. Michael Jackson, a child with an angel's voice, had eyes that seemed to flee something. His pure voice made audiences leap to their feet, but behind his smile was a small heart, racing under pressure. The Jackson 5, with Michael and his brothers, became a sensation. They signed with Motown, leaving Gary's cramped house for Los Angeles, where fame awaited. Michael shone brightest. Off the Wall sold 20 million copies. Thriller broke records with 70 million. becoming the best-selling album ever. He brought Billie Jean to MTV, shattering racial barriers in music. But Michael, the person, started to vanish. He wasn't a man anymore, an icon, polished and framed by the world's expectations. One night, in a smoky recording studio, he sat alone by a window, staring into the dark. A sound engineer said, Michael tweaked one track until 7 in the morning, sweating, like stopping meant failure. In an interview, Michael said, "If I don't surpass myself, I'll fade away." Nobody knew if he was joking or serious, but he never stopped. He studied every top 100 song like he was racing the world. On Motown's 25th anniversary in 1983, his moonwalk stunned 47 million TV viewers. A stagehand said, "The crowd shook the floor, but Michael just smiled, like that boy was used to the lights." Fame came at a cost. A friend who worked with him whispered, he talked about someone, always in his head, a voice telling him not to stop. Who was it? Fans, media, or an unseen force? Michael worked relentlessly, haunted by his own success. When the studio lights dimmed, leaving only faint music and lingering smoke, he stayed by the window. Nobody knew his thoughts. Some say those were the moments he truly lived and felt the loneliest. The king of pop was born, but Michael Jackson, the man, was being swallowed. A friend said, "I saw him watch his Billie Jean video on a small TV, muttering, 'Not good enough.'" The pressure to top himself, to create miracles every time, was a tightening noose. Was this the root of his darker days? Did that unseen voice in his head push him to the edge of tragedy? Chapter 3. A fire burns his dreams. Flames erupted on stage. Michael kept dancing, hair ablaze, the crowd screaming, unaware their idol was melting in pain. Smoke rose, the stench sharp, until bodyguards doused the fire, pulling him backstage. Michael clutched his head, lips trembling, but forced a smile for the audience. At Cedars-Sinai's ER, doctors bandaged second and third degree burns. Michael's eyes lost. A nurse said, "He held my hand," whispering, "I don't want to go back on stage." But weeks later, his schedule was packed again. Who dragged him back? Doctors with new vials of drugs? Managers for million-dollar deals? Or Michael himself, afraid of being forgotten? The fire left permanent scars, forcing Michael to wear wigs. He started carrying a small pillbox in his jacket, like a sacred relic. Nobody could touch it. Once, it fell backstage. Michael snatched it up, hands shaking, like he'd lost something holy. Inside were oxycodone and propofol, which he called milk, bringing instant sleep. A friend said, Michael called propofol his only escape from sleepless nights. But that sleep was a black void, no real rest. Before shows, Michael stood for hours before backstage mirrors. They weren't mirrors anymore. A portal where he saw the Gary boy fading. The fire's scars mixed with his father's big nose taunts, fueling an obsession with his face. His third nose surgery aimed to erase the fire's marks. A dancer said, "I saw Michael stare in the mirror, muttering, 'Who's looking at me?' Like he didn't know himself." The pillbox became his shadow. A stagehand said, before every show, he checked it, eyes begging nobody to notice. Once he said, "If I stop, they won't forgive me." But who was they? Doctors keeping their jobs? Music companies demanding performances? Or a voice in Michael's head pushing him on? A friend said, he stood in the dressing room, staring at his reflection, saying, "I can't stop, even if I want to." The fire didn't just burn Michael's hair. It scorched part of his soul, opening a path to addiction. That pillbox, always near, reminded him he'd lost control. But who was behind those pills? And why couldn't he stop? Was the pillbox and Michael's whispers a sign of a tragedy already set in motion? Chapter 4. Stage lights, betrayal's blade. Amid flashing lights and roaring crowds, they started calling him Wacko Jacko. Michael smiled on stage, his sequined glove waving. But that night, in a dark room, he curled up, reading vicious headlines, and sobbed until he choked. He once said, "The stage lights are where I hide to forget everything." But by the late 1980s, those lights, once his throne, exposed every scar he tried to hide. Tabloids mocked his vitiligo-bleached skin, spread lies about him sleeping in an oxygen chamber, raising a chimp named Bubbles like a child. A friend said, Michael held a newspaper, hands shaking, asking me, "Why do they hate me so much?" The real blow came in 1993, when Evan Chandler accused Michael of molesting his son Jordan. The civil suit ended with a $23 million settlement, but Michael never admitted guilt. He told a friend, "I just wanted to help that boy. Why would they think I'd do that?" The deepest cut came from family. In 1993, his sister, LaToya, went on TV, calling Michael a pedophile. The world gasped. Michael stayed silent, offering no defense. A friend said, that was the day he first shut Neverland's gates, like he wanted to lock out the world. LaToya later recanted, saying her husband coerced her. But the wound was too deep. A Neverland worker said, Michael stood at the ranch's gate, staring into the distance, like his family wasn't his anymore. In 2005, another accusation from Gavin Arvizo put Michael on trial. He was acquitted, but the stage lights were now knives. A former FBI agent said online, files on Michael were passed internally, but oddly, they hit the tabloids 2 weeks later. Someone wanted them leaked. Some fans believe music companies, eyeing Michael's billion-dollar catalog, fueled these accusations. A friend said, Michael muttered, "They want me to fall, but I won't let them win." But who was they? The stage lights, once his sanctuary, became a blade. He used sedatives to dull the pain, but they pulled him deeper. A dancer said, I saw Michael smile under the lights, but when they dimmed, he curled up, clutching his head, like the light took everything. A newspaper called him a deer in a burning forest. Nobody saved him, only cameras poised to catch his collapse. The stage lights betrayed Michael. From refuge, they became his exposer. But who was behind those secret files that tore his life apart? And why wouldn't the lights let him be? Were those secret files and the stage's betrayal a plot to destroy Michael Jackson? Chapter 5. Neverland, a paradise without laughter. In Neverland's gardens, where roller coasters spun and children's music played all day, Michael often walked alone at night, as if searching for someone long gone. He built the ranch as a fairy tale world, with carousel horses and cotton candy to reclaim his stolen childhood. But behind the laughter of invited kids, Michael found only silence. A worker said, I saw him on a bench, staring at the sky, eyes empty, like nobody was really there with him. His marriage to Lisa Marie Presley was a hope for love. But at the 1994 MTV Awards, after a shocking public kiss, Lisa stepped back, saying coldly, You don't need me. You need the audience. Those words cut like a knife. A friend said, Michael stood frozen, gripping the mic, like he wanted to scream, but couldn't. The marriage collapsed after 18 months. With Debbie Rowe, his second wife, Michael had 2 kids, Prince and Paris, but Rowe said it was a contract, not love. A rumor claim Michael secretly loved Elizabeth Taylor, calling her his warm blanket. A letter found after his death read, "Liz, you're the only one who understands me." In Neverland's bedroom, Michael kept a small toy car by his bed. Nobody could touch it. He said, "This is what's left of my childhood." A worker said, "I saw him hold that car, staring for hours, like it could take him back to days without stage lights." Neverland was Michael's dream, but also a reminder he could never escape loneliness. A dancer said, "Some nights, he wandered the ranch, holding that toy car, like he was talking to himself." Neverland had everything Michael dreamed of: coasters, candy, kids' laughter. But it showed him no place on earth was safe enough to be a child again. That little toy car, quiet and small, was like his heart, yearning for a home. Was Neverland, and that toy car, where Michael hid his deepest secret? Chapter 6. The final light goes out. This is it, a promised comeback, or a farewell. As stage lights lit up for his 2009 tour, Michael's body was fading. Gaunt, eyes sunken, he relied on propofol for dreamless sleep. A friend said, 3 days before he died, I called. Michael's voice was foggy, muttering, "I just want to sleep." He used Botox and painkillers to prep for the stage, but his heart seemed exhausted. At his final rehearsal, Michael whispered to a dancer, "They want me dead." Nobody knew who he meant. From that day, he started a diary, then tore out pages, like hiding something. A stagehand said, "I saw torn paper in the trash, scribbled with frantic words, like a plea." Dr. Conrad Murray, hired to care for Michael, gave him propofol nightly, calling it artificial sleep. But it lacked REM, just a silent void. A nurse said, Michael called propofol his best friend, but it was killing him. At 3 a.m. on June 25, 2009, a worker found Michael sitting in a chair, eyes closed, headphones on. The sound was rain falling, gentle but cold. He didn't move, like he was ready for a long journey. When paramedics reached his Holmby Hills mansion, Michael had stopped breathing. A medic said, Murray panicked, trying to hide propofol vials before calling 911. Some believe Michael self-dosed to escape pressure. Others suspect Murray was a pawn in a larger plot. A diary scrap, found later, read, "Sleep is my only escape." Michael always said he couldn't sleep. That night, he slept forever. The rain in his headphones, a quiet goodbye, echoed in the empty room. Nobody knows if he dreamed. Were those torn diary pages and rain sounds a sign Michael knew his end was near? Epilogue: a legacy and lingering mysteries. Picture this. Stage lights off, stands empty, applause fading into silence. Michael Jackson is gone. Only unanswered questions remain. He was the king of pop, shaping 20th century music. Thriller sold 70 million copies and broke racial barriers on MTV. He won 13 Grammys, invented the moonwalk, and founded the Heal the World Foundation for poor kids. In 2024, Sony bought half his music catalog for $1.2 billion. But Michael wasn't just numbers. He was the most seen and most misunderstood. His daughter Paris said, "Dad was the best father imaginable." But his life was scarred. From his father's beatings, the on-stage fire, to accusations that broke his soul, Michael was hunted by the media. A friend said he felt the world was against him. The clues, his whisper of, "They won't let me be," the letter to Elizabeth Taylor, the torn diary pages, hint at what? Was Michael targeted by music companies, as fans believe? Or did he sink into darkness, as some guess, unable to bear the pressure? His death was ruled manslaughter, with Dr. Conrad Murray serving 4 years. But is the truth that simple? A fan wrote online, "We were too hard on Michael, but did we ever understand him? His life teaches the cost of fame, media's cruelty, and a sensitive soul's pain." Picture Michael on stage, lights blazing, crowds roaring. But when they dimmed, he was alone, with only rain sounds in his headphones. Maybe the truth was already spoken. We just didn't want to believe it. What do you think? Share in the comments. Michael Jackson is gone, but his mystery lingers, like a melody that never ends. What do you believe about his story?